Hello, everyone. This is Re-Kast, and I'm your host, Stephanie. And today I have guest Paris along with me. Re-Kast is a podcast of a film and television analyst, well, more of an analyst show. We'll be discussing an old film, a new film, an old TV show episode, and a new TV episode. If you haven't seen the full thing, that's fine, because what we're going to do is going to mainly talk about the pilot, and I may give a few hints here and there about what may have happened, but not too much of spoilers. Today's theme is interracial dating. The old film we'll be discussing will be Jungle Fever. The new film will be Get Out. The old TV show is a hybrid of Cinderella with Brandy. And then the new TV show will be the pilot episode of Power. So just give me a second and I'll get my PowerPoint right up. All right. So, a few things about Jungle Fever. Came out in 1991, written and directed by Spike Lee, stars Wesley Snipes, Annabella Sciorra, Samuel L. Jackson, Ruby Dee, Ossie Davis, and John Turturro. There were cameos throughout the film by Queen Latifah, Anthony Quinn, Tim Robbins, Halle Berry, and he likes to cast other actors from all his other films. So I remember seeing one actor. He played someone who was kind of racist in this film, and he was a racist in Black Klansman. So it's interesting to see everything kind of full circle. Stevie Wonder did majority of the soundtrack. From this, Stevie Wonder was nominated for a Grammy, and there were 3 Cannes nominations. Now, I got a lot of this trivia from imdb.com. So for this film, Samuel Jackson had just undergone treatment for drug and addiction, and he only had 2 weeks from his discharge from rehab to start filming. Jackson has gone on record as saying that Gator's ravished look was not makeup, but actually the result of Jackson's own detoxification. And I noticed that too. I did notice that, that was a little too real for me because you could see like a gloss over his eyes. So,
Yes.
yeah, so it was like, oh, okay, well, they're really going messy, they're really going for it. Uh, Spike wrote this film out of anger from his own father marrying a white woman. That's
Wow.
something, yeah, I didn't know about that either. And then to prepare for this role, Halle did not bathe for 2 weeks because remember she played the crackhead in this. So yeah, but
That
what are
is
your thoughts on
dedication.
that?
That's
Exactly, that
definitely
is.
dedication for a woman. Definitely that.
I know going
I,
a day without bathing is a lot.
no,
So
definitely
two
not.
weeks, like okay,
Wow.
what's happening here? You couldn't. You probably have to order in. You couldn't go grocery. You couldn't date. None of that stuff. Like, ugh.
No. That's
Oh
interesting. Okay.
yeah. Now, first thing we'll talk about is cinematography. When it comes to cinematography, the main word on that is light and shadows. And a lot of directors, they have a cinematographer who works the camera, so they'll tell them how to do certain shots, certain angles, and even film with filters to give a certain look. So if you look at this picture right here, this is the opening shot, and you can see it's kind of red up here, and it kind of filters down to like a little bit of a yellow color right here. This is he can use a filter to give that effect. So and throughout the film, he used different filters to make it look different colors.
Okay.
And then with this breakfast scene with Wesley, his wife, and his daughter, he used kind of a yellowish hint right there. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of noticed that this isn't the best shot of it, but you can kind of see how the like this his face is yellow with his nose, and then the yellowish right there. Like everything is just like but I don't know the meanings of it. I have to do research on what each color of the filters mean. But there is cinematographers that tell you the meaning, but I completely forgot. I took a cinematography class last year, but I forgot all the meanings of it.
Okay.
But look at this. You can tell the difference between this. This has white. See, if you go here to here, you can tell the whiteness. It's kind of a dreamlike, like everything's white and bright. Uh, Flipper, who's Wesley Snipes' character, he works at an architectural firm.
Okay.
Um, Here's Tim Robbins, and then in the background in the red is Annabella Sciorra, which is interesting because there's a scene when they first meet. They're actually wearing the same color, and I'll talk about that too. With cinematographers and directors, they like to have clothing. So with cinematography, it's the background, the filters, the clothing. They work with the production designers and costume designers to make a certain symbolism of look. So they all kind of work together.
Okay.
Another scene is here. This happened right after he told uh, Spike Lee's character Cyrus, Wesley Snipes. He told him about the affair, and then he saw his brother Samuel Jackson Gator, who just asked for drugs. So this is the ending scene. Like if you look at his face right here, there's shadows. Cinematographers and directors like to use shadows to symbolize kind of this hidden. When you use shadows, you're trying to hide something or you're
Okay.
indecisive about something. So it's your thought processes and everything. That's why horror movies are done in the dark. And we'll talk about that with Get Out. But
Okay.
this kind of the shadows from the fences kind of shows his how perplexity of it. And then before that, Wesley was in the room speaking with the owners. I like the camera because the camera would go around in a circle, which is hard to do because when you're filming on a track, editing is very hard. So they had to do that on a dolly or something. But what was important about that scene was that he um, he was like, I'm ready for a promotion. I'm already the only black person here. All the accounts, all the money that you have are from me. It's time to promote me. It's time for this. And the owners were just argumentative about it. So that, I guess that symbolism of going around a circle is that conversation, symbolizing like we're just talking in circles. You're not
Yeah.
gonna budge. I'm not gonna budge. It's time to go. Have you ever dealt with that when it comes to work? Felt like you're always talking in circles and felt like you were at a job and felt you should have been promoted and all you got was a big runaround?
Oh yes, all the time. For sure.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Um, I found a way to create a new system for I was working for a cable company and for us to be able to communicate with the other employers while we were on the call with other agents, but they kept on saying that it was on us because we weren't notating the account correctly. But
Mm,
sometimes we only had a certain amount of time that we were able to notate the account, so there would be some details that we would leave out. So it would be easier for us to be able to, oh, the last person that touched this account was Ashley. Let me instant message Ashley and try to get some more information on this account if she can remember it. And they didn't want to do that because they felt that it would be a distraction or it would
mm.
be used not appropriately. So eventually, after I left, they opened up an instant message system. It's just like, well, can I get some coins for this idea or something? But yes.
Similar thing happened to me. I was working at a call center and I was like, you know what? We had to raise our hand for a floor walker, someone to come over to help us, whether it's notate the account or get approval. And I'm like, why isn't it color coded? Because
Yeah.
there's only certain floor walkers who can help with certain things. So all the people who need blue, we know that they need this, and all the people who need red, they need the supervisors. That way, it's less time consuming. But I don't know if they ever listen to that. But in one ear and out the other. But
Exactly. Of course.
exactly. But moving on, let's talk about writing. What I loved about Spike Lee's writing is the fact of he did a lot of symbolism. Uh, the symbolism of the father, the black father, walking his daughter to school. You don't see that anymore. Uh, Spike Lee wore a Morehouse sweatshirt, and the Wesley Snipes' daughter wore a Spelman sweatshirt. There was symbolism when it comes to colorism. There was symbolism when it comes to when all the Italians were speaking, Sinatra was playing in the background for music. But when we were speaking, we have Stevie Wonder. So
Yeah.
that was great right there. What's the exciting incident? It would be when Angela was first introduced to Flipper at work. He specifically asked for a black female assistant and notated that he was the only person of color. This symbolized to me that this was the owner's intentions because they literally said, "Well, this is reverse discrimination. You send her back because it was the color of her skin." Now, if you look at these two photos right here, over to the left, he has that look that every black person has when they're speaking to their boss. It's like, "You've got to be kidding me. I can't speak my mind. Like,
Yeah.
if I didn't need this job, I would tell you off." And then over the right, he kind of gives into it. He's like, "All right, fine. You win. You're the boss. This better work. And if it doesn't work, it's on you. I told you so." So going into the topic, because I know we only have a few minutes per film, since with interracial dating, how the relationship starts is no different than any other stereotypical boss falling for the secretary. They have late night dinners,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a montage of different scenes of changing clothing, and you can tell like they're getting to know each other and everything. And then the opposite of that was John Turturro. His name is Paulie. He likes his regular customer who's a black woman. So that's how they do the interracial dating. They have a Italian man dating a black woman, and then Wesley Snipes dating an Italian woman. So one of the conversations with Wesley Snipes was them talking about how dark his skin is versus her paleness. And then it was interesting that that incident of lust happened only after 6 months of her being on the job. They tell like Wesley Snipes tells Spike Lee's character Cyrus. He felt like you can't tell anybody this is important, and Spike was like, "Cool, I'm not telling anybody." Same thing happens to Angie. She tells her friends, and then obviously someone tells someone, all hell breaks loose. And
Mm.
what was interesting was that the conversation that she had with her friends was like, "Well, I would never do that. I would never date a black man. It's disgusting." And then the same conversation happened with Italian men. Um, Paulie's crew, John Turturro's crew, was saying that, yeah, they would sleep with a black woman, but they wouldn't be seen with one.
Yes.
And versus Spike Lee was like, "You're crazy for doing this. It's dangerous. I can't believe this. Whatever." And then later on, there's that conversation with black women, but it wasn't about white men. It was more about black men dating white women. So that's the main theme. So when it comes to you, do you remember any of these things that happened? And if so, what kind of stood out to you?
I've dated. I've tried attempted to date someone outside of African American men, and of course we were vibing great together. The dating scene was awesome, but when it came down to meeting our parents, my parents, they, I don't want to say the term see no color because I've been reading into that recently, saying that that's something that we shouldn't be talking about because color does exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my parents, they opened up to him, but I didn't receive that same love from his side of the family. Like they were speaking in Spanish and like behind my back or whispering when I went to a dinner with them. So it was very, very uncomfortable, which made it in the relationship because he didn't see what they were doing, but I saw it. He was
Right.
blind to that. So I've dealt with that before.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to it speaks to a few things about that. And we'll talk about this a little bit later because when in the film Wesley Snipes brings Ange to meet his parents, but that was on purpose. It was on purpose because the father, Ozzie Davis, kind of shamed her. He basically gave a history lesson on slavery, and it was like, well, white women they've been held in this pedestal, and they've always been interested in black men, but that's for the lust factor.
Yes.
So, um, and then Ange couldn't bring home Wesley Snipes because not only did uh, Ange's friend remind her, like, oh, you remember that Puerto Rican guy? They killed him. And then her father beat her when she found out she was dating a black man. So it's more deadlier.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Another thing this film does is how black women feel about interracial dating. Queen Latifah in her cameo, they were at a restaurant in Harlem. She was ignoring them for 30 minutes. And then Flipper gave her, Wesley Snipes gave her a hard time. And then she, in turn, started insulting Ange. And then once Flipper's wife finds out, she starts throwing his stuff out on the street. And then, like I said, Anne's father beats her. He disowns her. He calls black men child molester, serial killer. He doesn't want to be a father of an in lover. So she has to move in with her friends before she
Mm.
eventually moves in with Wesley Snipes. Um, the conversation with the black women was, it starts off with, there are no more good black men. They're all drug dealers in jail, homosexuality, baby mamas. But the counterpoint was, we're all looking in the wrong places. We need to be looking at the truck drivers and bus drivers or garbage men or whatever. And then the counter to that was, how many black men want to date someone who is more educated and has more money than them. And then another counterpoint of that was that white women throw themselves. And then Inez, who was one of the friends, she was like, I just want a man who's nice and sweet and so forth. It doesn't really matter his skin tone as long as he's good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then the conversation turns to colorism. One of the women was like, well, how do you feel about being the darkest in the class and told you're not attractive? And it used to be black, you had to be the lightest skinned, but even though that's not enough, they want the real deal, which is white women.
Right.
So they made it as if they made it if there's a white woman on their arm. And then the wife, Flipper's wife Drew, she ends the scene by saying, no matter her color, he's gone. So what are your thoughts about that? Because that came out in 1991. And it seems like I still hear those conversations on social media today, in 2020. So, what do you feel? Do you agree with some of these sentiments that other Black women are feeling, or what's your insight on that?
Um, I you know what? I've been on social media a lot, and there's an app called TikTok
Mhm.
that a lot of the younger, like a lot of younger cousins I know that are into it. So one of them reposted a couple of black guys, young black guys, probably like high school, college, and they had two categories. One was black women, one was white women, and they were all lined up, and they all raced to the white women. Like, who would they rather date? White women. Then there was like
Mm.
a polls. It was like they were doing interviews with people in the mall with guys, and they were asking all the guys, athletes, young athlete guys in high school, I'm assuming, who do you prefer to date? And they said white women because they're easy, they could be controlled more, and they're better in sex as far as sex goes. And I thought that was just ridiculous that they just, it's, I don't, I guess they feel like they win when they be with someone that they can belittle. I don't know. But I've
Mm.
noticed a lot of it, and it's very discouraging, especially that I have an African American daughter. And I don't want anyone to feel like she's lesser than because of her skin color.
Right. But well, what about when it comes to dating? Do you feel that um, either there are no more good ones, they either only want a different ethnicity, or are we looking in the wrong place, or does it even matter the skin tone at all?
It doesn't matter the skin tone at all. There are really, really great men out there. I just feel that um the higher you are, as far as like career wise, education wise, how you carry yourself is what you're going to attract,
Mm,
you know.
okay.
So I feel like now that I've gotten older and now that I'm starting to find like my purpose, that I'm walking towards my purpose, I'm really attracting some really, really great men that
Mm,
wouldn't have told me 3 years ago that they didn't exist. Like I wholeheartedly believe that we have great men in our generation. We just have to not search for it, but let it come to us. Just focus
mm,
on your find your purpose, be happy, and then it'll come to you when it's time.
okay. Okay. I do like that. What I found was interesting is that when Wesley Snipes finally goes and apologizes to his wife, the first thing that she says that she knew eventually he would make his way to a white woman because he has a complex about color. So
Okay.
the real issue was the wife was so upset because her whole life she was insulted for being mulatto. She always got insulted, such as you're high yellow, you're a heifer, you're this, you're that, you know. So they both have complexes about color, and they're kind of exploring it and kind of counterbalancing that out. Another thing that was interesting is when they went to the scene about the Italian men were bad mouthing black men as well. They're talking about Marion Barry. If you remember him, he was the mayor of DC, and they talked about all his sins and how black men took over sports. So what do they have left? And then they compared Rudy Giuliani and David Dinkins losing, but none of them voted. So it's like, well, is it really about having the best person in office, the skin color, or the fact that you just wanted someone who was Italian who looks like you in office? So I felt that was very interesting. And
Yes.
then one of the breaking points in the relationship between Flipper and Ange was when they were play fighting after that dinner with his parents. The police, who were from the film Do the Right Thing, they're like, well, what are we doing here?
Yes.
You're like, what am I doing here? So this scene right here, if you look at this picture, this is another example of cinematography. Over here to the right, you see Anne. She's wearing black, so she's internally trying to figure out what to do, and she's hiding her true feelings. But the light is shining on her, so she's more open about it. But if you notice over here on the left, he's all the way in the dark, and this is when the realization, his true feelings come out, but like she didn't know it at all. So it was just like, okay, well, I had no idea you felt this way. So the questions she asked him was, well, where are we going from this? Because he has no intentions of getting divorced. He's still married. He doesn't want more kids, especially biracial kids. He even insults them and said the kids that come out that are biracial, they're nuts, they're mixed nuts. And then she was like, you know, you're no different than my family. And and then he was like, well, he was like, your family's racist. She was like, you're saying the same thing that they are. So you're being racist, but just in a different way. So after the next morning, the next scene, she's gone. She runs back to Polly. Forgot to mention that her and Polly, they were both dating. I guess the norm is that when you're from the same neighborhood, even though you're Italian, you're going to marry someone else who's Italian from the neighborhood. So they've been dating for a while. But after they broke up, she ran back to him. He was like, I don't even want to be with you anymore. So this is when I questioned, okay, well, if you easily ran back to him, was it just lust between you and Wesley Snipes? You know?
Mhm.
Then towards the end of the film, Polly has this realization that His father has the same feeling as all the other Italians in this movie. His father disowns him, but Paulie wants his own life. He goes out on a date. He gets into a physical fight with his friends. Um, but even after that fight, because the fight was about him going on the date with the black woman, after that fight, he still goes to on the date. He just lied about why he's all bruised, but that's interesting that he really wants to be with this woman. So that's interesting with that. But the end of the relationship is when Wesley Snipes and Andrew was like, "We have nothing to talk about. This relationship's not worth it. I don't love you. This is like a Disney film. You just want to do this out of curiosity." So at the end of the film, and she goes back to live with her father. And then Wesley Snipes flip, he reunites with his wife. The child in all of this is happy, but it's a little too late. The wife is crying. She's like, I'm kind of over it. See, the interesting thing about this film is when you think of Jungle Fever, yes, it's about interracial dating, but everyone talks about Samuel L. Jackson and Halle Berry and the drug scene. So people don't remember all of this. They remember Samuel L. Jackson being a crackhead. They remember Halle Berry being a crackhead. They don't remember how political and straightforward this was. So, out of this rating system, out of 5, ranging from 1 to 5, 5 being outstanding, I would give this a 5. I felt that for 1991, this was before its time. I felt it was very political. I felt that it said everything it needed to say. It was filmed beautifully. It touched on the right symbolism. It was great to me, and I'm surprised it was snubbed. Out of 5, what would you give this from your memory?
I would say a 5 because it's
5.
still very true. It's still happening. It was before its time for sure. It definitely opened up a lot of doors. And anything with Spike Lee, like I'm a fan with his camera angles, the colors that he uses. I love it. I love
Yeah,
all of it. So
yeah,
definitely a 5.
exactly. And this is one of the films that are never talked about when it comes to favorite Spike Lee films. They always default to Do the Right Thing. They're gonna talk about Black Klansman, but they don't talk about Jungle Fever. So moving on to this theme of interracial dating, let's talk about Get Out. With Get Out, it was written and directed by Jordan Peele. It came out in 2017. It stars Daniel Kaluuya, Allison Williams, Bradley Whitford, and Lil Rel. Because we're from Chicago, so some of us may even know Lil Rel, but yeah, he's from Chicago as well. This film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, won 1 Oscar for screenplay, and won 2 Golden Globes. What was interesting about this is it's the complete opposite of Jungle Fever. Yes, there was a lot of symbolism. It was a lot of forewarning. It was a horror film, but it never talked about interracial dating. So we'll get into that. Here's a little trivia from that. Due to the success of this film, Jordan Peele became the first African American writer, producer, and director to earn more than 100 million in a debut film. This film was inspired by Eddie Murphy's delirious joke about horror films, and also it was written during the end of the Obama administration. And then the opening scene was inspired by the film Halloween. So it was describing the perfect white neighborhood. And you and I were both from the suburbs. So we're used to clean cut, manicured lawns and Homewood and Orland and how these neighborhoods. So did any of this kind of look familiar to you when you were watching it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because back then in the suburbs, we were able to walk around at night and not have to worry about anything. Everyone knew everyone. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it was
Yeah.
safe. So I definitely felt like I think his name was Lake Keith. I think that's his
Like yeah,
name.
Lakeith. Yeah, Lakeith. Uh-huh.
Lakeith. I really like him. But that definitely brought back memories. Like, oh, I used to be able to do that now. Definitely no.
Oh
But
yeah.
yes.
And that's what I like about the opening scene. Because here's a picture of the opening scene.
Mm.
To talk about cinema, let's talk about Lakeith and how he reacted. That's what I liked about the film. Like he acted like a regular black person. Like if we see cars coming up, we have our senses up that something's about to go down. We're out. But we'll talk about that in a second. But if you can see my screen, the opening scene is what horror movies is about. I said earlier, it's about shadows, it's about the dark. Look at all the shadows. Look at how dark everything is. When you are a cinematographer, you have your key light, which is the main light. There's a fill light and there's a backlight. Uh, the main light will be this lamp light. The fill light will be like these lights from the houses, but you, because it's a horror film, you're not going to get that much light. So that's how he was able to abduct him. So this scene here, this is when the car is pulling up beside him, and then look at Lakeith. He's like, all right, I'm walking at night, but I know I'm in this suburban neighborhood, but it doesn't mean things can't go down. So, and then he was like, nope, not me, not tonight. That was his actual dialogue. Nope, you ain't about to get me tonight. He
Yeah.
turns around. And look at all these shadows. You can't see nothing. You can't see nobody. And I remember feeling that way when I'm walking home at night. Like, man, even though it's nice, but here's the car door opening. It's like he's like, oh no, what's about to go down? You still can't see anything. Boom, right there. You can barely see this person right here abducting him. So after this, he gets choked out. But yeah, that's what makes it a horror film. So the next part of cinematography, like I said earlier, was clothing. The main character is Allison Williams. Her name is Rose in the film. If you start off here, she mirrors Chris. Uh, her allegiance, her clothing changes with her allegiance. She starts off wearing the same colors, same laid back tone. Look at her hair. It's like a nice little curl. It has nice bangs. You go down here, next day, she's wearing the same colors as these participants at the party. This is at the bingo party where they do the slave auction. It's
Right.
white and red. So I think her white is like she's still slightly divided, but still she's there for a job.
Mm.
Then up here over at the right, she's in all white. And her hair, like she no longer has her bangs, it's slicked back. She's monotone. She has no expressions. This is when she's talking to Laurel on the phone, Rod, and she knows she's being recorded, so she's being smart about it. She's even in the shadows, like she's trying to hide something. Yes, she's wearing all white, but I guess that's to prove the preppiness of it. But all the darkness and the shadows, yeah. And then the final scene right here, this is the final time you'll see her. She's in these preppy clothes, khakis, button-up t-shirt, white button-up t-shirt. She's drinking milk, not even chocolate milk, just regular plain milk, and she has a cereal separate. So yeah, if you notice it, that's some of the things that Jordan Peele loves to do as a director. He likes to play with clothing and lighting and so forth. So what do you think about this? Do you agree or do you disagree with that?
I definitely agree with that. With her wearing white, that's a sign of pure
Mhm.
being innocent. And she's on the phone with Lil Rel in a white turtleneck, trying
Mhm.
to come off as her being innocent. So I thought that was a great thing that the wardrobe department did with that. So yeah, for
That
sure.
and perfectly because she literally is like, oh, I remember when you looked at me, whatever. But yeah, it was perfect, perfectly being
Right.
innocent. Um, Here, this was a great shot right here.
Mm.
It's just whether it's acting, whether all of this, and I remember reading in the trivia that they asked him to do this 6 times during the auditions, and perfectly, he did it 6 times. Now he's a British actor, so Brits they take their acting seriously. So I think he
Yeah.
studied drama, but in this scene, perfect. Um, Here, filming with a filter. As you can tell, this comes off as a little bit bluish. It is
Mhm.
very hard to film at night, so we fake nighttime. we fake nighttime by using a blue filter. So that's why in the sunken place you see all of this blueness. Just as
Okay.
a FYI. As far as the writing goes, like I said earlier, this is the opposite of Jungle Fever. It doesn't actually talk about the relationship. It talks about being black and the different stereotypes. However, it does discuss the concerns, but it's getting brushed off as a joke. So whenever Chris came to Rose, he was like, "Yo, I think something weird is going down." She was like, "I think they're doing X, Y, Z." She's like, "Oh, really? They're doing this, 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 and this." So I think that might be a common theme in interracial relationships, that
Yeah.
what we see, like if we're being treated differently, if we sense something that's going on, it's brushed off as you're overreacting or you shouldn't read into it like that. So that's a good kind of checkpoint there. Not telling the parents about being black, obviously that was a lie, but that's a little bit of them talking about him, the relationship. And then another thing I noticed is that in filming, that there were no other black women besides Georgina and Erica Alexander. Did you notice that at all?
Yeah. After I watched it probably like 6 or 7 times.
Yeah,
That's
'cause,
just a movie that's a movie you have to go back and watch a few times because you didn't notice that or you didn't hear that, and now that part makes sense. I thought this was a great movie, but yes,
yeah.
there weren't.
And then right, and this whole film is about symbolism, forewarnings, and double entendres. Like the symbolism of the deer, hitting the deer is his mom. The father correlates, Rose's father correlates that with black people, and then in the end, he uses the elk to kill the father. The father's actual quote was, "I don't like the deer. I'm sick of it. They're taking over. They're like rats. They're destroying the ecosystem. I see a dead deer on the side of the road. I think to myself, that's a start." You can't tell me that's not black people. That's the
Yeah,
exact same verbiage that's used. Another symbolism was not all skin folk is kinfolk. Lorel went to the police, and Erica Alexander, that was a black woman. There was a black woman, a black man, and a Hispanic man, but they all laughed at him when he said it was like a sex cult. They didn't even try to think like, okay, maybe not a sex cult, but maybe something weird is going on. Um, and then she even admitted that she didn't even want to dress that way. Her hair was a wig and it was blonde and her clothes were pretty plain and solid. So that was a symbolism of, like I said, not all skin folk is kinfolk. The grandfather's suicide, to me, that was reflective of slaves jumping ship because he's no longer in control of his body, and he would rather, I felt rather wrong, he would rather die than live the life of someone else. I don't know if did you happen to catch that symbolism there when the grandfather shot Rose and then shot himself? Did you think of that symbolism?
I didn't actually.
Yeah,
Now it makes sense. I see that.
I didn't
Okay.
pick up that. I didn't pick that up until I remember watching Black Panther when Killmonger said that. So I just
Exactly.
correlated that with that.
Okay.
Uh, Another symbolism is the police siren. As all black people, when we saw that in the film, Chris held up his hands and then Rose crying for help. That was the biggest one. We all know, like, it was like, oh man, it's about to go down. So it was a sigh of relief when it was Laurel, but we all knew what that meant.
Yes. I
And
think
then,
I'm sorry. I think there
what?
was an alternate ending where the police actually shoots him. I believe there was an alternate ending.
Oh, it was. I bought the Amazon version, and in the alternate version, the police come, they arrest him. He goes to jail for the murder of the whole family because all the evidence burned down in the house, and then everyone's dead, and then they couldn't tie it to anyone. And then Laurel comes to visit him, and Laurel has this whole, I really want to, help you out. He was like, it's been 6 months, you're fighting the dead end fight, but I'm free because I got over my fear of the deer element of that being my mom with me helping Georgina back in the car. So I'm free, I'm good. So we know the deal. You don't have to save me. So yeah.
I
And
have.
then, yeah, I know. Um, the last symbolism I saw was music. Redbone was played in by Childish Gambino when we saw the intro of Chris's apartment. It said "Stay woke," and I thought that was hilarious.
I thought that was a perfect song for that. It definitely was.
Exactly.
The lyrics, oh, it just tied in perfectly.
Absolutely. I thought it was interesting how there wasn't that many other songs. Like everything else was violins because you
Yeah.
use violins more in horror movies because of the tension and how strong it could get.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to forewarnings, I noticed Chris said at the beginning, "You didn't tell your parents that I'm black. I don't want to be chased off the lawn with a shotgun." And at the final scene, Rose is shooting at him at the door with a shotgun.
Mhm.
Um, Lil Rel warns him, "Don't go to the white parents' house." Lil Rel says at the beginning, but Chris ignores him when the father says, "Oh yeah, my father almost got over it, losing to Jesse Owens," uh,
Yeah.
that created the whole experiment. That was the kind of that inciting incident. This has been going on since 1937. Another forewarning was Rose told Chris that Jeremy would put him in a headlock. And since we saw that first scene, he had on a mask on, but that was kind of tying back into Lakeith being put in the headlock, and
Mhm.
later on him trying to size him up, put him in the headlock, and telling him how he attacks. Another warning was at the bingo slavery auction, the patrons were like, "Do you play golf? You know, is this sex stereotype true? You know." So they were coordinating stereotypes as to why the guests were there. What I found interesting was the how Chris found out the truth. That little door that was open, where the pictures of all the her and the Rose and all the black men were, and her female friend. That was another forewarning there. And
Yeah.
the last one was the suburban house. Um, the father said, "Oh yeah, the nearest house is across the lake." That was a forewarning that anything could go down. You can scream, holler, and yell, and no one's gonna hear you.
Mhm.
That's a perfect to a horror movie. That reminds me of Scream. That's exactly how the movie Scream was. You know,
Yes.
going to double entendres. Rose kept saying a lot of double entendres. She was like, "Oh yeah, this is all a ploy to get you." Uh, and then when the police came and they asked for Chris's ID, she was like, "Well, I won't let anyone fuck with my man." You know, she literally didn't want that to happen because they needed him for the bingo. So, but she played it off like, "I don't want, I'm standing up for you," but no, you're doing the job.
But then too, I think that I think he said there were a lot of strange things happening in the area or something like that. So I
Yeah.
think too that the police officer was probably trying to look out for Chris, and I think
Mm.
that's why the young lady got nervous about it. Um,
She didn't want to
but that's what I
tie.
had got.
Okay. She didn't also didn't want to have any trailing paper trails
Exactly.
because
Mhm.
he's kind of the perfect target. Like his dad's never around, and then his mom died, so he doesn't really
He
have
never had
anyone.
anyone. Exactly. Yep.
Another double entendre is when the father was showing him the tour, Chris the tour. He said mother loved her kitchen. He never explained. He's like, "Well, we like to keep a part of her in here." He never explained what specifically. Then we got introduced to Georgina in the kitchen, so
Yeah.
that was the double entendre right there.
Mhm.
And then another one was the black servants. We couldn't let them go, and we treat them like family. So that's the double entendre because you're trading body parts.
Exactly.
And then the hypnosis of Chris stopping smoking, that's the service we provide. Uh, the slavery bingo is the service along with the transplant. So, yeah. But
Mhm.
on to the theme of interracial dating. What I found the most interesting was when we actually do talk about the dating, he said, "You're all I got." I said this. So he relied really heavily on that relationship. He couldn't kill her. I noticed that. She said to him, although you're my favorite, she had no issues shooting at him, trying to kill him. But when he was choking her, he stopped choking her and he couldn't kill her.
Right.
I noticed also he trusted her. He found the pictures with her and other black men and Georgina, and he still wanted to leave the house with her.
Yes.
And then when he kept telling her the suspicions, um, he never thought that she was a part of it.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, your family's doing this. The other people at the party was doing this, but not her. So he kept telling her because he kept trusting her.
Yeah.
So does that play into the stereotype of innocence? Like, do you see what I mean? Like, that plays into that stereotype? Oh, well, she's so innocent, she has no idea.
Mhm.
Um, he never questioned her about being the first black man she dated. She said that at the beginning, like, oh, you're the first black man. He never questioned her about that either. I found that very interesting. And then the last part, this doesn't go into interracial dating per se, their relationship. Her targets were the entertainers and the exceptional. So she was researching in the NCAA players, and
Yes.
the grandfather was a track player. Chris, he was the photographer, and Lakeith, his name was Dre, he was a jazz artist. So they were all targeted, and that goes into the stereotypes of black men. So
Mhm.
what did you get out of that when it came to the interracial dating in this movie? What did you notice?
I thought that was interesting with her looking up black basketball players or black athletes because it is known that athletes, African American athletes, usually leave the black woman behind to date a white woman. And not trying to be
Absolutely.
that person that's like that, but I mean that's the truth. That's what we see. You know, they leave the high school sweetheart for the new Becky or whatever. So I thought that was I was like, wow. I mean,
That was
it's right there. That's true. That's what happens. So I like that a lot. As far as her coming off as being innocent, it's always, especially now, what's going on with everything. White women words trump over ours with the quickness,
mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like wow. And this is what's currently going on now. When I was watching it last night, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is what's happening now." Like the bird calling guy with the white lady, the guy that was in the park, and how they just pulled up another call with her saying that he was assaulting her.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that I'm glad that he put that out there too in the film.
Exactly. And there's only a few athletes that haven't dated a white woman, so it's surprising the ones that stay with them. Like, for example, Russell Wilson, his first wife was white, and then he got with Sierra. That was interesting. And then LeBron James always stayed with his high school sweetheart. So there are a few, but there are more. There's more interracial dating in NFL and NBA and so forth than it is others. So yeah, that Jordan Peele was spot on, and he even has a white wife as well.
Mhm.
So to me, I think this needed a sequel because after Laurel came and picked up Chris, it just randomly ended. Because once the police finally arrived, they're not going to tie this to a conspiracy theory. His DNA is all over the place. This has been going on since like 1930, so there could be so many black people that are under control. So they
Yeah,
didn't investigate that, and then my last one is how will the others get saved? Like, how's Lakeith Stanfield going to get saved? So they just ended the movie.
absolutely. But you know, too, what I liked about this is there's a big theory on the black market and they feel like a lot of African Americans are coming up missing because they're kidnapping us and killing us for our organs.
Yeah. Which was this was the movie, like
Exactly.
organ trafficking. Yeah, and there could be that's why there could be a sequel. But Jordan Peele said he won't do one unless he sees one. I'm like, what do you mean you don't see one? There's three plot points right there. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Sure. What are we talking about? Like, come on. Out of five, I gave it a four. I gave it a
Okay.
4 out of 5 because I liked Us more, but I didn't like the fact they didn't discuss interracial dating. That I felt it could have delved into that more. Don't get me wrong, I love the cinematography. I love the symbolisms and forewarnings, but at the end of the day, it's like you didn't say anything about anything really. So
Mhm.
what would you rate it
I'm
out
gonna
of
give it
five?
a 5 because this is
Five.
a movie I can watch over and over again and not notice certain things that I didn't notice the first time or the second time or the third time I saw it. So just like with all of his other things, with us, definitely it was
I loved
things
Us.
that I didn't catch until after the third time that I watched it. I even had to go on YouTube to try to
Yeah.
find out some of the symbolism in it. So I give it a 5 because I feel like he can't do any wrong. I just
See, I
love him.
I give Us a 5, and I give this a 4. Because
Okay.
I think it Us was a much more step up. Like, oh my god. But yes, moving on. Let's talk about television. Let's talk about Cinderella with Brandy. I love this Cinderella, but I felt at parts it didn't make any sense. So watching it last night or the night before, I'm like, wait a minute, this is just some major plot points that I don't even know. But writer, this is a teleplay. The book was Hammerstein, Rogers and Hammerstein's musical. The teleplay was written by Robert Freeman, and it's a teleplay is a play written for television, and it's based off the 1957 musical. 1997, that's when it came out, broke a record for best-selling movie for made-for-TV movie, nominated for 7 Primetime Emmys, won one. And of course, Brandy made history being the first African American Cinderella with a multicultural cast. I mean, I'll have love for it, but it's not perfect. Coming to cinematography, costume design, I noticed how colorful it was. I noticed that it was still in England, still in Europe, maybe in the early 1800s. So like they had, you know, before I guess during the time of slavery, but during the time of indentured servitude. So they didn't talk about race. It was divided more about class than it was about race. So I noticed the purples, the blues, the greens, and the pinks were the main theme of throughout the whole film. What did you notice when it came to color and everything?
I was excited to see all the colors. I remember having Cinderella was probably the first one of the first books that my parents bought me when I was younger. And what drew me into the book was actually all the colors.
Yeah,
And so that I was so happy to see that. And purple, he has on a purple suit that stands for royalty. So
yeah,
I thought the costumes were really great in this. They did great with the colors.
right. When it comes to production design, down here at the bottom right, you can see how elaborate it was. You can put like a green screen in the background, but it was probably not that big of a production site, but it was still
Mhm.
pretty painted very beautifully. They used a lot of crane shots. So crane shots, all those really tall shots all the way to get overhead shot. So you can see this in the ballroom scene because they captured all the everyone dancing at the same time and how synchronized it was. And then when it comes back to lighting, you can see the contrast of this versus Get Out. If you look over here at the right, it has like a glow to it. It's very white and it's dreamlike. So this is the wedding scene, right? By the way, but yeah, you can just tell how glowy and how romantic. So yeah, And another thing I noticed was symbolism. They allowed black hairstyles. Whitney had her curls,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Brandy had her braids, and then Whoopi had her locks. And then over here, Natalie had like half cornrows and natural curly hair. So I was very appreciative of that. I forgot about all that. I guess I thought it was normal, but I guess it wasn't normal for the time. Singing, one of musicals is one of my favorite. It's very operatic, but you can't buy the soundtrack. I found that very interesting. Like you cannot go on any site to buy the Cinderella soundtrack because they said they didn't submit something in time and missed the deadline, so they missed all the recordings. Yeah, that's insane. But Bernadette Peters, she did Broadway, so that's why her range was pretty high. And then of course Whitney and Brandy, like the voice, and then the Bible. You know, can't beat that. When it comes to interracial marriage, getting to the topic, he's Filipino. The actor in itself is Filipino, but they don't discuss that. They have a white father, a black mother, and we found out they were married, but it wasn't an arranged marriage. They married for love. So I guess that kind of hinted to, I guess they noticed that they were black, but you can't really say. I don't like that they don't discuss race at all. And I said earlier, maybe it's because they didn't really define race, or maybe that's what they want as a utopia. But what do you think about that? What do you think about the fact that they never really said, well, he's Asian? And like, what do you think about that?
I think I believe that this was probably released when during the peak of interracial marriages.
Mm.
Well, that's back in further back in the day off of another movie called Love Story, which was really good. But I believe that they were just putting everybody into the
Mm.
film, which I appreciate so much because I have a child. Representation matters for her. And this was a movie that I was like, I definitely have to have her watch versus the one that just came out a few months ago or a year ago. Because it's a black girl, a main character, and she's a black girl. So honestly, I don't think they really too much. They were just, let's just throw everyone in there. Color is love. Let's make a good movie, and that was that. I don't. That's how I feel like they came about with casting for the
I
movie.
think they did that too, but it bothers me that it takes away culture. I love seeing myself on screen, but we can't act like I'm also not black. So I want to talk about the fact that I'm black because they did things a little bit different with this. It's interesting that even through the multicultural casting, the king was still white.
Hmm.
And to make it not seem racist, they had Natalie's character have her be a black daughter of the same complexion, so she wasn't biracial. She wasn't like lighter skinned, really fair skinned. And then I noticed that the black men that I saw, they were all just in the background as their servants. So I'm like, oh, okay. But they could have talked about race and they didn't because in the songs, uh, one part, Brandy said she would be an Egyptian princess versus the original version had Norwegian princess. And then Whitney was like, "Oh, something with your pretty little braids." So they could have mentioned multicultural, but they kind of stayed away from it. So that's why I'm a little disappointed. And then I want to talk about the things that just did not make sense to me. They saw each other the day before, so how did they forget? Like that did not
Yeah.
make any sense because he did the whole Princess Jasmine thing. He was in the courtyard being the servant, mingling with all the regulars. That's how they met. They had a full conversation and a song. And then they were like, well, that night we're having a ball. Like, how did you forget in 24 hours? But if you watch the other Cinderella movie that came out like in the 70s, that version makes more sense because he was on a voyage away. Because even in the cartoon, the prince was away for a while, so she didn't recognize him that way, and they didn't see each other before.
Mhm.
But that's why it's conflicting. Like, okay, you guys just saw each other. And then I'm like, okay, if the ball is for eligible women, why are there men there? And then, because in the cartoon, they were being introduced by their fathers. And then what bothered me is that the cartoon explains Cinderella's black backstory of how and when their mother and father died, but they didn't do it with Brandy. They were just like,
No.
well, your dad died. I'm like, okay, what happened to our mom? It's just, okay, well, all right.
Yeah.
And then the last part was they tried on every shoe, but he does not remember her face. Like that does not make any sense to me. But yeah. Did anything not make any sense to you, or you didn't really notice any of these things?
Honestly, I didn't notice any of those things. I was just happy to show this movie to my daughter, and that's what that is. Yeah, that's
Okay.
all.
All right. So for me, I rank this a 3.5. Um, I mean, I love the music, but so many things that just didn't make sense to me, and I felt like this was a perfect opportunity to discuss race, and they didn't. They just kind of like, well, it doesn't exist. So I'm like, okay. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. What do you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 4, only because the music in there in the movie was amazing. Of course, because of Whitney and Brandy. Um, and representation matters. Like the first black princess. Like
Yes, that's why
I
it's so
love it.
high. It's high, but they she's the first black one, but they didn't want to talk about it. That's what bothered
Yeah.
me. Say that she's black. Say she's from a Nigerian country or something like that. And then
Oh.
the last show we'll talk about is Power. Information about Power. It's on Stars. Came out in 2014. The creator showrunner is Courtney Kemp. Executive produced by 50 Cent. I think it's snubbed. I think it should be nominated for Emmys, Golden Globes, all of that. Not to put down the NAACP awards or the BET awards, but I think it also needs that recognition because I've watched it. I'm even watching the spinoffs, and there's about 5 spinoffs that are on its way.
Okay.
With trivia, each season revolves around James St. Patrick making tactical decisions as one would in a game of chess. So basically, he has each character be chess players. And then season 3 debut was like the most watched episode of any Star's original season ever. And then it's the first Star series to even reach 6 seasons. So talking about cinematography, I want to talk about costume design because we've been talking about that all night. If we look at Tasha and her, and this is just the pilot episode, she goes from innocence to wearing white with a little bit of black to wearing white and gray. Because we, at this point, we don't know what she knows about Ghost having duality in his life. And then she's wearing navy blue and then black. So this is the scene where she uh destroys his bloody shirt. So we know that she knows just about everything that Ghost is involved in.
Mhm.
What bothered me was the fact that Ghost in the scene to the right, this is what she was going to wear to the club that night. And he was like, Tasha, you shouldn't be wearing that. It shouldn't look like you're trying to get into the club for free. It looks like you should own it. So he made her go back and change into this purple dress right here. But then he sees Angela in an even more revealing dress and in red, but says nothing. So I think that ties into the dating aspect as well. When it comes to this theme of dating, they don't talk about this either. It's interesting that they felt that Ghost felt so strongly about Angela that he kept learning Spanish since she taught him 18 years prior. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that he doesn't treat Tasha the same way. She's like the runner up, and he has her do all the dirty work. And that to me ties into a little bit of colorism. He made the writers made the dark skinned woman uh into that life, into that drug life, into the gang life, whatever you want to call it. And he made the Hispanic woman the educated one, the lawyer, not just a lawyer, any lawyer, not some, easy lawyer. She works for the United States office, so
Yeah.
she's high level. And then even in the beginning, the first line to Tasha, she was like, "Tell me I'm beautiful." He says, "You know you are." He couldn't even say that to her. So that bothered me as well. And I felt it's interesting that Ghost hates this is further in the seasons. He hates every man Tasha dates, and he doesn't encourage her to want more out of her life. So he takes the easy way out by dating women who are already there. And then the last thing I noticed is that everyone else, like even including Tommy, everyone recognizes Tasha as a good woman, but Ghost. So you
Mm-hmm.
tell me, what were some of the symbolisms that you noticed when it comes to interracial dating and how Tasha's being treated versus how Angela is being treated?
So, one episode that I definitely remember the most from the show was when Ghost was telling Tasha his plan of him wanting to be better, him wanting to get out the game, the drug game, and make money the legal way. But she had this hood mentality still that she said, like, what, are you insane? This is the best way to go. Like, I
Yeah.
want to go. Like, I feel like she wasn't trying to make him grow into being something better. And but with Angie, I think her name was Angie,
Yeah, Angela.
Angela, she was like speaking life into him, like telling him like he should be able to do, like speaking positive into him. And it made it seem like black women only want to be with drug dealers and gang bangers, so
Just for the money and the power and the looks of things. Yeah.
exactly.
Like they're feeding into and they do that even with Keisha, her best friend. They made us seem like we're materialistic. All we care about is looks and glamour, and we don't want more in life.
Hmm.
So if he wants more in life, why doesn't he kind of want that for her or encourage her to do that either? So you're right, it made us look bad. So this episode, I thought this was a very good episode. I I just don't like how everything else played into it. Colorism, and like you said, not having black women seem that positive light. So yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5. So what about you? What did you rank this episode?
Well, going off the pilot episode, I definitely would give it a 4 for sure. But later on in the next couple of seasons, I felt like I was kind of let down.
Really, what would you have changed, or what would you like to see different?
I felt like the writing was sloppy at the end. Some of the stuff they left out a lot of major parts. Um, the killing of the daughter, like it really wasn't, like it was just, I feel like they could have done more for sure. I would have wanted to know more about Tommy also, you
You mean like
know.
how he grew up and everything?
Yeah. And I was hoping that the new spinoff would go off into that, but I see that's
Oh,
not
there's
the
gonna be.
kind of
Oh
go
yeah,
into
there's
that.
gonna be 5 of them. He gets his own spinoff.
Okay.
Yeah, because this spinoff with him follows him to California.
Right. Okay. I do remember reading something like that.
Right. It
Yeah.
goes Ghost because it's about Tyreek becoming Ghost. And even in this spinoff, they're doing the same exact thing. They have the lighter skinned woman be the educated one, and then the darker skinned half Puerto Rican one be about that life.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah, because they're gonna do. a prequel, this Ghost one, Tommy's one, Kanan one, maybe one more other one, but at least four spinoffs. So that's what's interesting.
Okay. Okay.
But
Off the record, Kanan was my favorite character, honestly.
interesting, really. Tommy's my favorite character because he never switched anything up. You know, you never question Tommy. If day one he's this way, day 91 he's this way. So he's definitely my favorite. And I like Dre. Dre also, but I have a
Really?
crush on Dre. So that doesn't right. So maybe that has something to do with it. But thank you, Paris. I enjoyed this conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time to watch these films, discuss this with me. I may have spoken a little too much, but I'm glad to have you back at any time. And I will send this over to you, and hopefully you'll be back in the future
Yeah.
episodes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to more reviews with you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. You have a good evening, and I will see you later.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. You have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
All right, everyone. That was the end of our episode when it comes to interracial dating. You can catch more episodes. I have them correlated by theme. So each month has a theme, each episode has a theme, and you can check out more over the next year. But you guys have a great evening, and this was Mahogany Double Veiled Films recast exclusively will be seen on househillmedia.com. Thank you. Have a good evening.